Hello and welcome to the Filtration Hour, presented by the World Filtration Institute. I'm Mike Malloy, Communications Director for the WFI, and I'll be your host for today's event. The World Filtration Institute is an educational and advocacy group of professionals from all parts of the filtration community in all parts of the world. It comprises leaders from business, academia, journalism, and government, and includes materials, processes, products, and policies, and the larger systems and social goods that rely on effective filtration. One key part of the WFI mission is our Certified Filtration and Separation Specialist Education Series, comprising more than 30 sessions throughout the year and led by some of the most knowledgeable professionals in the industry. These sessions provide comprehensive coverage of air and liquid filtration, from fundamentals to advanced technologies, and offer a great learning experience for people at every age and every stage of their career. The sessions are offered live online or on demand, and this year's program kicks off with our opening ceremony session on March 10th. You can register on our website today. Another key program is the Filtration Hour, where we assemble a group of industry experts to focus on an important topic that engages many parts of the global filtration community, and we invite anyone with an interest to participate in the discussion for free. Today, our topic is filtering the air quality noise, where we will discuss air quality data and how we gather it, what it means to players at various levels of the filtration value chain and to the general public, and what it says about the larger systems that are supported by filtration and its impact on our future. The Filtration Hour is a free event, but more importantly, it's a free exchange of ideas, and we invite everyone to contribute to today's discussion with your ideas and questions. Today's session will be 90 minutes, with the first part focused on discussion points for the panelists, and the second half focused on questions from the audience. We'll take a 5-minute break at about the midpoint. In the second half, we encourage all of you participating today to ask questions of the panelists by either entering them into the Q&A on the Zoom menu, where I'll compile and share them with the panelists, or by raising your hand to be recognized. So, joining us today to discuss filtering the air quality noise are Dr. Paula Olsiewski, contributing scholar, Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security in the USA. Nick Agopian, president of Reviveaire in the USA. Suzana Vidaković, filtration and product development expert, joining us today from Frankfurt. Heike Krüger, honorary board chair from Nano-Control, also in Germany. We also have Surendar Balakrishnan. Surendar is the co-founder and editorial director of CPI Industry, which is a publisher of Climate Control Middle East in the UAE. Welcome to Surendar. As a journalist, we will include journalists in all of our filtration hours as we go forward to help to spread the message throughout the industry. And now I'd like to introduce our session chair today, Dr. Iyad Al-Attar. Dr. Al-Attar has organized the event and choreographed it and has the following video to get us kicked off.
We're living through the fastest structural shift in human history. We're cementing our world at a scale previously unimaginable. We continue to treat the air as an infinite resource. But when the true cost of every breath is the health of our vital organs, the price is simply too high. We all know the story of the lungs, the asthma, the cough that never leaves us. But the lungs are only the point of entry. Modern pollution is stealthy. These particles are small enough to hitch a ride directly into our bloodstream, infiltrating our entire body and quietly threatening our reproductive health and future fertility. The time has come for a new beginning. We must harness advanced filtration innovations to reshape industrial processes, public transport, power generation, and yes, urban developments. True sustainability demands that environmental quality becomes the core of every business model. We have to take charge to change everything. Cities to prosper, planet to save, and generations to protect. And when we do, we won't just have achievements to celebrate, but a story to tell.
To those of us who work regularly in areas related to air quality or filtration, There can be a bewildering range of data, data sources, governing bodies, and jurisdictions, as well as materials, products, and processes to choose among. But for the general public, these issues are often invisible, a low priority, or poorly understood. This session of Filtration Hour focuses on that divide, with the aim of raising awareness while simultaneously reducing the complexity of air quality data to encourage healthy solutions that work for everyone.
If urban design is the language of the city, then everything we see is designed for a reason. From the precise width of a sidewalk to the exact spot where a tree meets the pavement, it's all a matter of detailed choice. From the density of stores on a block to the height of a skyline, the geometry of a building and how it sets back. Then we must admit, this is all intentional and nothing is accidental. If we truly believe this is the intention, then there is no reason at all why air quality shouldn't be embedded from day one into every layer of urban planning, city design, and the building's architecture. If we can design the streets, the walls, the glass, and the steel, why can't we design the air that moves between them? In the Filtration Hour, we don't just answer questions, we ask new questions. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Filtration Hour.
All right. Thanks very much, Dr. Al-Attar. That's a great way to get this kicked off. It really states the challenge, it states the stakes, and we have a fantastic panel here and ready for a great panel discussion. I'd like to introduce as the moderator for the discussion with the panelists, Mr. Mitch McCreary, Marketing Director for WFI. Mitch, please take it away.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Very good to see you here today. I'd like to start off with a little opening statement from each one of you, if you don't mind. Paula, do you have an opening statement for us, huh?
Yes, I do. First of all, I want to start by thanking the World Filtration Institute and the organizers for inviting me. This is a really exciting opportunity too, and hopefully my timer will get going here. All right. Anyway, one of the challenges we face is that there is limited awareness of indoor air quality. Indoor air is invisible. Most people are not aware that they spend 90% of their time indoors. That's basically more time indoors than whales spend underwater. We also inhale a lot of air, a small swimming pool worth of air every day. While people can see wildfire smoke and can sense when there's an odor problem or a thermal comfort problem, people cannot smell PM 2.5, which is a very harmful pollutant, whether it harbors a respiratory virus or other harmful chemicals. We need to make indoor air visible so that when the indoor air quality is bad and the alarm goes off, we also then need to know what to do. Now, fortunately, we know how to clean air. We push air through a filter, and that cleans the air. However, there are some issues. Buildings are designed to meet codes, such as in the US, ASHRAE 62.1 or 2, but most building codes overlook operation and maintenance. There's lots of economic work showing that the benefits of clean indoor air are 300 to 100 times the cost of providing it. However, it's hard to get people to pay attention to something invisible. So we at the Johns Hopkins Center of Health Security have developed a Model Clean Indoor Air Act and have been working with the U.S. and state governments to come up with legislation to improve indoor air quality. And with that, I will conclude my opening remark.
Thanks very much, Paula. Nick, you have a couple of minutes that you want to offer something?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Iyad, for that inspiring video. And thank you, of course, the World Filtration Institute, my panelists, and everyone joining today. We're living through a fascinating contradiction. We obsess over what we eat, we regulate what we drink, we track what we sleep, we count our steps, measure our blood chemistry, yet we still treat the air inside our buildings, the substance we inhale 20,000 times a day, as an afterthought. For decades, HVAC design has optimized for temperature and energy, comfort and efficiency, and that's become the language of compliance. But now we understand something more profound. Indoor air is not just about comfort. It's about infection control. It's about cognitive performance, chronic disease risk, and economic productivity. It's the infrastructure of human performance. The evolution of filtration is not just higher MERV ratings, as we hear a lot about today, or better fan curves. It's about governance, it's measurement, it's accountability. It's moving from design intent to verified outcomes. We need to know what we're living in. We already regulate things like R values and kilowatt hours. We certify materials, food safety, emissions. The science to measure particles, CO2, VOCs, and filtration performance exists today. What's missing is how do we align all this together? Standards that define health targets, trusted sensor architectures to verify them, and of course the economic models that will reward buildings and building operators that maintain these higher quality air, which today the market is asking for. We live in a whole food society, so it's very important on what Paula mentioned, what we eat and what but we don't necessarily regulate what we breathe. Filtration is no longer a component choice. It's an economic health lever. It's the cognitive performance enhancer. It is risk management strategy. If we get this right, indoor air quality becomes as expected and as measurable as clean water. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will certainly change everything within the built environment. I yield the mic. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Nick. Thanks very much for that statement. Suzana, I know that you have some ideas that you want to talk about.
Thank you, Mitch. And thank you, WFI, for inviting me. I absolutely love the topic. And thank you to all my fellow panelists. And a huge thank you to everyone who joined today. I can see we have a large audience, which I'm very happy about. So filtering the air quality noise. Why do we need to filter the air quality noise? Why is air quality a topic that is so important? If we look into some numbers, probably by 2080, some statistics say we're going to be 10 billion people on the planet. And by 2050, according to the United Nations, almost 70% of all of us will live in urban areas. So that puts an immense strain on resources. And clean air, or the air we breathe, is one resource. There are other factors as well, why we have to talk about air quality. Where we have dense populations, there's a higher risk of environmental subtopics, but also diseases. So high density is a problem. Yes, it is an economic driver, but it also puts a lot of strain on social systems, on infrastructure. So we need to look into that. Now, why is there a lot of noise around air quality? Because that is such a multifaceted topic. We need to look into air pollution. We need to measure something. How do we gather data? What sensors do we use? How do we evaluate? What does that mean? How can we prevent some of it instead of only mitigate and filter? What do we do with the knowledge and technologies that we have today? So I would say, where do we start? I'm really an avid supporter of behavioral sciences and communications. So I would say, let's communicate, let's talk about it. And that is what I hope that we do today, that we make noise around this topic, that we also talk about who do we need to talk to? Is it only the industry, our peers? I would argue definitely not. We need to find a way to reach to different groups, find different languages for them to make it understandable. And those are all a lot of steps. And I hope we can take the first one here today, or one, not the first one, definitely one of the steps here today. And I hope we can inspire today people to ignite some ideas, to have them ask questions. Maybe we find out that we have some new questions that haven't been asked. So that is what I hope to do today with all of you. And again, thank you for inviting me to be part of the session. Thank you.
Certainly welcome, Suzana. Now, Heike, do you have a couple of things you'd like to say?
Yes, I have. Thank you for the invitation of WFI and to give Nano-Control a voice today and to join you here. It's an honor for me. I have a dream that one day the air we breathe indoors will be safe and clean. The foundation focuses on the widespread toner-based laser printing technology you find in almost every indoor space, affecting everyone. Printing just one page released billions of ultrafine particles accumulating over the day. The invisible secondary emissions can overcome all biological barriers and reach every cell in the body, including the brain. Many of our team members have lived through the consequences of long-term exposure to the printer-emitted particles. Some became seriously ill or died by cancer. But despite of all these difficulties, our team continued, helping others, advocating for healthy indoor air, and creating a knowledge platform by lived experience and scientific expertise. I'm just one of 4,000 canaries in the coal mine, early warning systems, only the tip of the iceberg that deserve to be heard. 2,000 anonymized cases analyzed by Professor Dimitar Bella and his team at the University of Massachusetts Lowell and published in the Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine in 2024 revealed respiratory problems in 90%, allergies in 70%, technicians with higher risks for cancer, and with visible toner exposure, chronic fatigue, asthma or COPD, and cardiovascular disease. It is time for prevention for binding rules and limits for indoor air pollutants. Professor Dean Schraufnagel said, air pollution is a silent epidemic and PM 0.1 is perhaps the quietest of all pollutants. We are ambassador for nanoparticles in the GO-AQS initiative. Together with GO-AQS and World Association, we support the development of transparent, science-based international standards in serving technical equipment for indoor air quality. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Heike. Very interesting. Surendar, do you have some opening comments here?
I do. Thanks, Mitch. So first of all, my thanks to the World Filtration Institute for this wonderful opportunity to speak in this episode of Filtration Hour. So my thanks to Dr. Christine Sun, to Dr. Iyad, and Mike, and of course you, Mitch, for inviting me. I speak to you as a journalist. Now, two developments have sort of reshaped the media landscape. The first one being the indispensable nature of social media in our lives, and the second one is the rapid evolution of AI. I believe that media noise has scaled new peaks. Today, I believe that everyone is a journalist, and though I must not generalize, the time-honored tenets of journalism are either being ignored or disregarded. I truly believe that challenges and responsibilities have increased multifold for STEM journalism. And I do believe we live in a time of media chatter where authentic information is getting lost. Simply to state it very simply, there's an urge to post in a hurry. The principles of verifying and authenticating information are under threat, and this has introduced a media landscape filled with misinformation and at times I even believe pseudoscience. I represent Climate Control Middle East magazine, which has been covering the HVACR industry, including the policy, science, and engineering of IEQ and air filtration for over 20 years now. As editor, I'm deeply conscious of the need for fact checking and restraint and of telling a story fully to its logical conclusion. If Dr. Iyad says we cannot ignore PM1 if we want to achieve favorable health outcomes as a journalist, I want to invest the necessary gravitas to the narrative till there is profound intake of the information, leading to a degree of remedial action.
Thanks
So
very
there is
much,
the
Surendar.
depth of media. Sorry?
I'm sorry, I thought you were finished. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not. I'm just about to finish. Have I overrun my time limit? I hope not. I'll just try to finish off quickly. So there is a depth of media coverage of air filtration, and there is a range of coverage. Our ongoing editorial campaign, IEQ and Fertility, is an example of journalism exploring the range. We need to establish and preserve credibility as a news organization, and we need to provoke attention through powerful imagery. Contaminated air leading to the depletion of ovarian reserves, or their impact on male sexual health are words that make for a strong narrative, as long as we adhere to science to establish authenticity. So that's my opening statement as a journalist, as an editor. Thank you.
Thanks, Surendar. And I'm sorry for interrupting. I apologize there. So let's open up with some questions here. Our first question is just to kind of get things started here. Why isn't healthy air treated with the same urgency and measurability as clean water? And what will it take to force HVAC standards and building occupants and managers to prioritize respiratory health, infection control, and cognitive performance instead of just temperature? Paula, could you maybe add something to that?
Yes. Again, as I mentioned in my remarks, indoor air quality is invisible. So it's easy to ignore unless somebody's hot or something smells, or they see wildfire smoke outside and they say, oh, how is the air indoors? But people really do not understand indoor air quality. They don't, so that, because it's invisible. If you drink water, you taste it. It may be safe to drink, but it could taste bad. And you're saying, I'm going to go get bottled water. If some food seems tainted, you don't have, in most what people who are well-resourced don't have to eat it. They can get something else. But you can't choose your air. We all have to breathe whatever indoor air is provided by the building we're in. So I am a strong advocate for increased filtration, for legislation to improve indoor air quality. But most of the policymakers and decision makers that I work with are asking that we first test the air. There's they want to see, is the air in their schools really as bad as previous reports from, the US government from 5 years ago? So people they just don't believe it because it's invisible and they can't detect it with their nose.
Good point. Very good point. Heike, do you have anything you want to add to this?
I have answer to the scientific needs and the breakthrough. That's next, if you want. It's okay?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. We need mandatory rules for clean indoor air with clear binding limits for pollutants and scores for global indoor air environments. We have high standards for water and food, but not for the air we breathe. 12 times the minute and 90% of our lifetime. Healthy indoor air is a human right. A global movement started with the Air Club and a conference in the UN headquarters in New York in September 2025, signing a global pledge for healthy indoor air by Montenegro, France, and more than 240 experts and organizations. Yesterday, I heard a part of the hearing about clean indoor air in the Parliament of New South Wales in Sydney. Professor Lydia Morawska confirmed that we have the evidence. The message of the speakers was consistent. So now it's time for regulations and pragmatic solutions. Viruses and toxic substances use particulate matter, especially PM1, as shuttle services, overcoming all biological barriers. There is no organ which is not affected. UFPs show stronger effects than PM2.5 and PM10. Exposure to indoor air pollution is linked with respiratory, cardiovascular, reproductive, and mental health impacts and health outcomes, including lung cancer, diabetes, leukemia, and Parkinson's disease.
Right. Very interesting. Thank you very much, Heike. Surendar, you want to add something to this as well?
Yes, I mean, sort of what Paula said resonates with me. And, I do believe that what is out of sight is out of mind. And, in 20 years of covering the HVACR industry, I'm painfully aware that though indoor air quality deserves a lot of attention, it's not getting that. There's a disproportionately greater airtime given to, say, energy efficiency, and rightly so. I mean, the world is on climate change precipice, and we need to address that as much. But we simply cannot ignore indoor air quality. We cannot ignore the mission critical importance of air filtration technology. And as a journalist, I'm conscious of this all the time. I sit down to put an issue together and to make sure that I give a certain number of pages in every issue of the magazine. It's not just a magazine. We also do conferences on different topics relating to HVACR, and one of them is the World IEQ Forum. And I've noticed that it pains me to say that the ones that we do on energy efficiency, on say food safety and cold chain, seem to get more attention than IAQ does. And that's something that we are trying to remedy. And the only way we can do that is by constantly keep covering the industry to take the message, as deep as possible, and perhaps even add a shock value to, the editorial campaign I referenced earlier, IEQ and fertility, has delivered that shock value. People are listening now. They're standing up and saying, yes, that's something we need to address, because it's a very emotional topic and it impacts something very basic, reproductive health. And from that point of view, I think we are on the right track. I mean, Iyad is part of that. Nick, my co-panelist, is also part of that exciting editorial campaign. And it's very inspiring. I think we'll see it through, and we'll make sure that we position IAQ properly.
Okay. Thanks, Surendar. Iyad, did you have something quick you wanted to say?
I just wanted to let you know that Paula and Nick had their hands raised, so they probably have
I'm
more
sorry.
valuable things to say.
Yeah, I see that. I'm sorry, guys.
Go ahead.
All right, Paula.
All right. Well, thank you. I wanted to make a couple points. And I want to start with Heike's point about printers creating air pollution indoors that's really harmful. And this gets to the point that often the building occupants are creating pollution. They don't know they're creating harmful pollution. So in this case, using your printer, who thinks that's like a health issue? All right. But this is an important health issue. Just as when you burn a candle at home, okay, that's nice, but that's like smoking a cigarette. When you cook food, all right. So those are in people's homes. So I think we can help people there, but we need something much larger, again, to make indoor air quality visible, and then show the way that there are simple steps. Maintaining your building can improve your indoor air quality. So that was just a few things I wanted to say. So thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Nick, did you still have something you wanted to add?
I actually did. Just to reinforce what's being said, as humans, we have a severe cognitive dissonance associated to what we can't see, smell, taste, or touch. And some of the differences, specifically to this question, is that to what Paula said, when water's contaminated, you see it. You see it, it's evident. If you get sick by drinking water that's contaminated with cholera, it's brutal, it's obvious, it's immediate. Indoor air quality, honestly, is much sneakier. And you don't know what's happening to you. You just end up with higher infection rates, or you have asthma, but now it's exacerbated. To what Dr. Iyad's video talked about, it enters our lungs and goes right into our bloodstream. So you got cardiovascular issues, cognitive decline, all that kind of stuff, and then you end up thinking you don't see the smoking gun. So you just think, oh, it's flu season, or, oh, I got brain fog, or I got bad allergies, or you're just tired. But, it's the prolonged effect over years and decades where we end up with this problem. Some are immediate, some aren't. Some are everlasting, and some aren't. So when we look at indoor air quality, it's like smoking a cigarette. I don't smoke, I don't recommend it, but from what I understand, people love to smoke, especially after having a meal, and they don't think anything's happening to them. But over a prolonged period, you end up living with COPD, you end up passing away sooner than you should, you end up living with issues. We used to think that, and this is based on some research from the World Filtration Institute, World Health Organization, I should say, is that people get old and they have dementia. So it's just because they're getting old. But now research shows that for every 10 micrograms per cubic meter of PM 2.5, you increase dementia in elderly by 46%. So we're not realizing that it's kind of like if I was to take this iPad here and I was to just hold it for a second, it's no big deal, and I put it down. But what if I was to take the entire webinar today and hold this iPad up for an hour? It technically gets heavier and heavier and heavier. So it's this prolonged effect to what you can't see, smell, taste, or touch that makes the difference that we don't have today when it comes to indoor air quality. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks very much. Anyone else have something they wanted to add to this?
Just very quickly, Mitch, I just want to refer to a couple of things. One that Paula said, you don't get to choose the air that you're inhaling. And that's very true. Since you don't get to do that, you're actually surrendering your respiratory system and potentially your entire body to an air quality that you don't have an influence on. Second point is, clean air is a human right. I have two issues here, and I may have shared my perspective on this. Clean air is a universal promise. We need to really define what clean air is. And if it's a universal promise and a human right, then we should maybe be discussing and addressing the ethical and the legal implications when we fail to deliver it. So I hope we're going to have a chance to dwell on this a little bit, because, coming up with this rosy universal promise of delivering clean air, my preferred term is fit for purpose clean air, or fit for purpose filtered air, would probably be an interesting thing to get the insights from the panelists on. Mitch?
Okay, thanks, Iyad. Paul, you had a comment?
Yes. The one pollutant that's really well regulated, indoor pollutant that's well regulated in the United States, is radon. And it's my observation that one of the reasons that that's easily regulated is that nobody sells radon for some other purpose or benefit. It's naturally occurring. It's harmful. So we know it's naturally occurring. We know it's harmful. So let's regulate it and address it and take care of it. Unfortunately, sometimes the air pollution problems are often related to products that, companies are selling. Okay. And so what are the choices that we should make? And again, I'm not the economist. I know I can make choices in my home about what products as my husband said, are we ever burning candles again? And I'm like, well, maybe for, for an important celebration. Are we ever using a wood burning fireplace again? Probably not. Am I using scented products? No. But again, this is one home, one family, and so on. But, there are other reasons why we have air pollution that are sort of, again, systemic, and other choices need to be made.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome. That is kind of interesting. You started off the discussion here, Paula, with invisibility. Yeah, air is kind of invisible. It's kind of hard to regulate that. So, but I'll move on to this next question that is kind of interesting too. It's kind of a deep dive. What's actually stopping us from creating a single enforceable IAQ standard worldwide? And why do we regulate insulation, R values, more rigorously than we regulate the air that people breathe? Paula?
All right. Well, thank you for calling on me. Again, I go back to that point of the policymakers trying to understand that, what they can do about indoor air. Now, improve your filtration and you can have better indoor air. That's sort of the first answer. But I'll give an example. In New York City, I believe in 2003, they introduced legislation to just get started on improving indoor air quality by making measurements in schools, public housing. There were 4 different bills, and I won't go into the details of the pollutants and so on. But much to my surprise, the city agency that was against this, and again, you can go look at the public record, was the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. And what their reason was that they didn't think the sensors worked. And so they didn't want to take action on things that they didn't work. Now, there were other people who testified that explained sensors, indoor air quality sensors do work and so on. But it was just I was expecting some other group to be against this. I didn't expect public health to be against it.
Okay, thanks, Paula. Appreciate that. Suzana, I've heard from you. Could you maybe add some input to this as well?
Yes, well, I would say there are numerous reasons, but probably we can talk about a couple. Adding to what Paula said, let's say it's also high complexity and variability. I'm going to try to simplify this and say if we talk about outside air, let's say if we take one region, it's probably going to be more or less homogeneous. But if we talk about indoor air, it's going to be totally different depending on the type of building. Let's just compare an industrial building where people produce something and what type of stuff we have there. Not only particles we discussed, but also gases. And let's take a home or maybe an office building. So there's a variety of things that add to whatever comes from the outside. Paula, you mentioned the candles, which I always get some negative comments on it when I say, oh, don't burn those, or when people get excited about having a fireplace and I'm like, oh no. Cleaning products. So there's a lot of things that we have indoors which is totally different. So that makes it difficult and complex. Then Paul already mentioned the legal framework. I tried to do a little bit of a research. I was interested in how many countries are actually talking about indoor air quality versus environmental or outdoor air quality. And it seems that half of all the world countries are considering only the outdoor air when talking about pollution, but we all know that indoor is much worse. Then we also we're talking about buildings. Let's start talking also about cars, public transportation. So all the confined, I'm going to call them confined spaces that we spend, like Paul, I believe you said it, like 90% of our time, which is a lot. Then we have to mention one more, economic hurdles. Let's say if we would have to retrofit HVAC systems, build modern one, then we have in buildings the trend today to seal the buildings, make them airtight because they're insulated. All the topics about energy loss and preservance, which is fine on one side. On the other side, that makes them very poor in air quality. And then I started this off with saying how important communication is. So I would wrap up this one with, again, communication and awareness, raising awareness. If we look into really, I would say, filter makers, filter media makers, us people that work in the HVAC area and space, we know our filtration. But if we look further down the value chain, there's going to be a lack of awareness in the industry is probably going to be considered as cost. And in the public, as said, people are just very little to not aware about, hey, this is dangerous and here's why this is dangerous. So I think awareness is a huge topic. And I think the more of it we have, the easier all the other discussions are going to be around legislation and around who's responsible, public health departments, occupational safety and hazard organizations, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Suzana. Let's see. Nick, you had a comment on this one?
I do. I kind of love this question. It's dangerous in the best way. It pokes directly at the absurdity on how we obsess over heat loss through walls, but barely understand what's going on through our lungs. Until lately, and I'm going to focus on ASHRAE standards in North America. Until lately, the particle filters that were installed in our HVAC systems were to protect the cooling coil. It was an absolute disregard for human health. And I'm going to bring up something, and I'm going to be aging myself, and this is horrible here, but I'm going to do it. One of the reasons why our values and energy is so critical, I believe, dates back all the way to the early 80s when we had the first oil embargo and then the second oil embargo, and cost of fuel or energy just skyrocketed. And ASHRAE lowered their ventilation rates down to 5 CFM per person. We ended up with a whole bunch of deficient indoor air quality and IAQ issues as a whole. But the goal there was we need now to create a barrier between the conditioned space and the unconditioned space, and sealing integrity of the civil structure was heightened. And our values were focused on, because we need to lower the amount of energy that's used to heat and cool, because there was a dollar figure to that. And energy codes that are national and regional or whatever came into play saying, well, our values lower energy costs. So it's very prescriptive. And when it comes to policymakers, something that's prescriptive is very calming. When you come to IAQ, which is more complex, it makes policymakers nervous because they prefer deterministic physics rather than something that's probable. So when it comes today, and to what Dr. Iyad mentioned and in his video, we can start putting dollars towards deficient IAQ issues, to health, increased health costs as an overall thing. So now that we can attribute a dollar figure, and maybe we need to get lawyers involved here to show how we can determine the cost of a life or the cost of cognitive decline and so on and so forth. that will change the perspective of policymakers, I believe, and it's going to turn everything around, and there's going to be more focus on IAQ. Thank you.
Right. Thanks very much, Nick. Yes, you're right. I mean, everything has to have some kind of a dollar figure attached to it, or else nobody's going to pay attention to it. Paula?
Thank you. All right, I want to make a couple points. One is, I mentioned this in my opening remarks, that we developed a Model Clean Indoor Air Act. We had legal scholars working with us. We had a whole multidisciplinary advisory team. It's 35 pages of sort of legal language, but the people who write laws understand this legal language and so on. And so it's sort of like we would hope that a government would adopt all of it, but they're starting by doing parts. So I have two promising areas. One is, so I gave the example of New York and how disappointing that was, but we've been focusing on the state of Pennsylvania and they passed some legislation called House Resolution 271, if anyone wants to look up it, that basically is to establish an advisory committee. So they need their own experts. They'll generally find lots of good experts in Pennsylvania, and they're going to conduct an assessment, a comprehensive study about IAQ regarding seniors and school children. So the point there is they have a committee, and they're going to study two populations they view most vulnerable: seniors and who are most likely in nursing homes, and children who are in schools. All right. They also have introduced some legislation that hasn't passed for tax credits and how you pay for it, but that's promising. And then at the federal level, again, and we've been working with people for years, but just in last September, we had bipartisan support from Representative Tonko in New York and Representative Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, and it's called the Indoor Air Quality and Healthy Schools Act of 2025. Again, this is very promising bipartisan legislation introduced, but it also starts with assessments of the indoor air quality, assessments of the ventilation. So people with these different bills, they sort of want proof. And in this federal legislation, they also want a feasibility to establish an indoor air quality index, so that if you had this index, you could then inform action if the index was in a red zone rather than a green zone. So that is promising. And on March 6th in Washington, D.C., there's an event organized by ASHRAE, co-sponsored by many, including the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, called Indoor Air Quality for Healthier America. I'm happy to share that information if anyone wants to attend, but it's aimed at congressional staff, and we hope that the bill sponsors will be there. So we are making some progress, but it's all starting with show me and have my experts show me. Thank you.
Mitch, you're muted. Suzana, you want to go ahead and then?
Yes.
Oh, sorry about
Yes,
that.
I just want to.
We're having a lively
sorry for
discussion
interrupting.
here. I was just going to say, Suzana, could you go ahead and come in too as well?
Yeah, I'm just going to throw a quick one here because it was Nick who talked about smoking, so I'm not the bad one here saying that. But let's talk about, for example, how many countries have banned smoking in public places. So this brings me to the question, who's responsible? Am I responsible as a person, like to control where I go and what I do? Do I smoke or not? Is my community responsible? Is the restaurant, for example, responsible where I go? Is the government responsible? So that's also why it is so difficult to come up with some regulatory system, because responsibility is also one topic that needs to be regulated. To which level is one of us responsible for imposing some of the bans, or does it have to be a ban or just awareness on what's actually going on? For some things, I would argue we should, where we know that those things are dangerous and causing a lot of diseases, that we should have bans in place. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that. Heike, do you have something?
A short comment to the costs. I think we don't have to prove this anymore. The pandemic and bad indoor air showed us the cost of polluted air, the impact of health, the absenteeism and consequences for cognitive impairment. The indoor air is like a free pass to make people sick. Professor Moravska said yesterday it would be a huge benefit to improve IAQ. It is the lowest hanging fruit for public health. We have to find a pragmatically way for solutions to avoid entering a building risking our health.
Okay. Thanks, Heike. Surendar, last question here.
Yes, sure. Thanks, Mitch. I just wanted to reference what Nick said about the disregard being shown to human health, and what Heike also just now said about the COVID pandemic. And as an editor, I saw that, and it was very dismal to see that during COVID, there was much greater talk on IAQ and air filtration and so on and so forth. But once we saw COVID out, we saw a rapid decline in interest in IAQ and air filtration as such. And so, for me as a journalist, this kind of intermittency, for want of a better word, is worrying. So how do we balance the need for good energy efficiency with good air quality that is fit for consumption, as Dr. Iyad mentioned earlier. And so it's a continuous process where we try to engage policymakers here in the GCC region. We work with real estate developers and with people in universities and schools and so on and so forth, to drum home the message that there has to be some sort of a balance. This is a disproportionate kind of attention being given to one aspect of building performance. And yeah, so that's my 2 bits really.
Thanks, Surendar. Appreciate it. We've really taken the gambit here on a variety of different topics there. Iyad, you had something you wanted to add as well?
Yeah, I have 3 points I want to throw in quickly before the coffee break. Suzana said awareness, very important. That I'd like in the second half of this filtration hour for Surendar to comment on this, because after all this great work, if we do not communicate this vividly to the audience, how are we expecting to embrace social change? I think this is a very important point. The second point is, why do we have to justify any investment in indoor air quality? Why do we have to say, if you invest $1 million or spend $1 million, this is how you're going to get it back? Every life we save is worth the energy we spend. And the last question I want to ask is, what's the difference between poisoning someone immediately and poisoning someone over 10 years? Shouldn't the legal obligation be the same? Mitch, back to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pass off to the coffee break now. We'll have a 5-minute coffee break. We'll be back at about the top of the hour. Okay? Thank you.
We're living through the fastest structural shift in human history. We're cementing our world at a scale previously unimaginable. We continue to treat the air as an infinite resource. But when the true cost of every breath is the health of our vital organs, the price is simply too high. We all know the story of the lungs, the asthma, the cough that never leaves us. But the lungs are only the point of entry. Modern pollution is stealthy. These particles are small enough to hitch a ride directly into our bloodstream, infiltrating our entire body and quietly threatening our reproductive health and future fertility. The time has come for a new beginning. We must harness advanced filtration innovations to reshape industrial processes, public transport, power generation, and yes, urban developments. True sustainability demands that environmental quality becomes the core of every business model. We have to take charge to change everything. Cities to prosper, planet to save, and generations to protect. And when we do, we won't just have achievements to celebrate, but a story to tell.
To those of us who work regularly in areas related to air quality or filtration, there can be a bewildering range of data sources, governing bodies, and jurisdictions, as well as materials, products, and processes to choose among. But for the general public, these issues are often invisible, a low priority, or poorly understood. This session of the Filtration Hour focuses on that divide, with the aim of raising awareness while simultaneously reducing the complexity of air quality data to encourage healthy solutions that work for everyone.
If urban design is the language of the city, then everything we see is designed for a reason. From the precise width of a sidewalk to the exact spot where a tree meets the pavement, it's all a matter of detailed choice. From the density of stores on a block to the height of a skyline, the geometry of a building and how it sets back. Then we must admit, this is all intentional and nothing is accidental.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. There we go. We'll get our videos back and get our panelists back. I hope everybody had a chance to catch their breath and get a cup of coffee. We have a great first half here. I really enjoyed the conversation. We've got some great questions from the panel, for the panel from the audience in our second half here. And a lot of these relate really directly to some of the things that we're talking about. And we raised a lot of issues. So in the first half, I want to make sure that we circle back to. So let's start off. I have several questions from Gregory Butler in the audience, and he was asking about, when we're talking about governance, and he's asking about environmental integrity governance and continuous monitoring as solutions to some of the invisibility issues and some of the sensor issues and control difficulties. Wonder if we could address, what's holding that back? Are these jurisdictional issues? Are they technology issues? Maybe Dr. Al-Attar, you want to start with that and talk about that?
Thank you, Mike. I think two things I want to mention here. This is a very good question. I also want to remind the audience that myself and Surendar, we published an excellent article, not because I authored it, but because we spoke the truth. If you want to improve something, you got to have a roadmap. A roadmap needs that you need to require solid steps to change things. You cannot just say, I'm going to do an air quality monitoring indoors and neglecting the air filter performance. So the article addressed four things. You need to monitor the air around a human occupant, monitor the air coming out of an air filter or an air filtration system, urban air quality, and then correlate this. The innovation lies where you get these systems, HVAC, filtration systems, to respond to variations in indoor air quality and human occupancy. Otherwise, the systems are not smart. They're not acting based on the data they're fed. So I think this is very important. If we want to change it, we cannot just dance around that change. We want to make sure we have systems capable of responding to changes in particle contamination, concentration, size distribution, and make this sensitive to not only particulates, but aerosol and gaseous contaminants. This is the way we can set ourselves forward to be able to do something that is meaningful. Mike?
All right, Paula, you've had something to add to that too?
Yes, there's one good example where of delivering good indoor air quality systematically, and that's through the Boston Public Schools. Catherine Walsh is the person who, as far as I know, is in charge of that. She actually gave a talk she gave a great talk at the UN event last September. But she and her team in Massachusetts, collaboration with government, academia, and again, facilities people have come up with a way, and they needed money to set it up, but they have shown that you can deliver healthy indoor air in classrooms, and they identify problems, and then they fix the problems. So for me, they're sort of the case that I like to hold up as being an excellent example where it's doable.
All right, not to stoke any Boston versus New York rivalries here, but you just gave a great example of a school system, a large public institution that embraced indoor air quality monitoring as compared with the New York system that didn't. What do you make of that? Is that just the fact that you have a liability once you know, and you have an obligation then to do something about it?
Mike, I wish I knew. I was born and raised in Boston. Okay. I'm proud of that. But then I've lived most of my adult life in New York City. And so you can only imagine so what joy I have in the Boston public schools and what disappointment I had that, again, the public health department, who I had worked with on other topics, was not in favor of that legislation. So, why things go forward or don't, I go to the people who are good at politics and politicians and so on. Funding also helps. During COVID, there was money made available to schools. Some school systems used it for other reasons. They hired more teachers. And I think that getting back to sort of other reasons to have good indoor air quality, you have more people show up. It reduces absenteeism. So there are many states in the US where the amount of money you get from the state is based on the number of students who show up. And then the other issue is poor indoor air quality impacts test scores. So if you're going to be measuring your test scores and the poor students are in there with high CO2, all sorts of particulates, they're not going to do well. So I think that I think it's complicated. I think that people who are in charge have to make decisions, and then they have to have some money to help them get started.
All right, Suzana Vidaković, you want to take up on that?
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to get back to the topics of governance and sensors. Most of the filters today, whatever application it is, they don't have sensors. It's just like you get a recommendation, change every 3 months, change every 2 years. But actually, the availability of sensors would look into, is it working, is it not? And that brings us to the topic that we discussed numerous times, which is circular economy. How can we bring the filtration industry into not just use it and dispose of? Sensors would play an important part in that. Like, how can we verify that something can actually last probably longer than it is? How can we design it in a better way so it lasts longer? And then what can we do in terms of legislation and governance? Can we say, okay, the government is going to support us in, hey, let's make the throwing away of this filter much more expensive than actually having it built more robust or to last longer. Let's make some modular stuff where you can keep the housing and just change the whatever insert is in there. So I think these two are very intertwined. Having sensors, having something that measures the lifetime, that pulls people into improving their product. And on the other hand, that could be something where we could reach out or work with different institutes in saying, hey, how can we push this much more towards a circular economy type of industry than where we are today?
All right, one quick follow-up, another that Gregory Butler had asked on the Q&A was related to the difference between different kinds of indoor environments? Meaning, is there a difference between home and work? And you touched on the kind of the personal liberty issues that people talk about when it comes to these things. What are your thoughts about continuous monitoring in different places, in a workplace versus a school environment versus someone's home?
Yeah, that's one of the hurdles. Like, how do you really want it, or can you measure in people's homes? And then on the other hand, if we look into schools or kindergartens, can we afford not to measure? Or let's say public transportation, where it's super difficult because, opening and closing the doors. What can we do there? How can we help people be more safe in public transportation? And then there's also a question, let's say if one of you also mentioned when we talk about industrial production sites that there's a lot of, and I can tell you, I had a couple of these during my career where you go to industrial manufacturing sites and people just show you here, we do this here, and then you ask, okay, do you have a filtration system? And then they tell you, well, no, it's not that dangerous. And then you start telling them, hey, this is, dangerous for people. But the attention really switches when you tell them, okay, this is also affecting your product, your machine, the way your processes are working. So huge difference. And definitely we cannot put, there is no one fits all sizes. We cannot put those different environments, although they're all indoor, into one bucket.
Yeah, it's amazing how the conversation shifts when you substitute productivity for health. It's
yes, but I don't see
totally
any
changes.
malevolence there, to be honest. I don't think people are bad and they don't care. I think this is, again, coming to the topic that I started with. It's awareness. People are not aware. When you make them aware of, the narrative changes, of course.
Yeah, Heike, you had something to add.
Yes, it is a very complex issue with the IAQ. And so I say we need definitely mandatory rules, and we need a clear leadership from ministries in our countries. And we need interdisciplinary cooperation between authorities, experts, industry, and a clear strategy for information for the public. We have to join forces, building a huge global network. It's beginning with this global movement Air Club. In Australia, yesterday they discussed about classification of different indoor spaces as an overview for private homes, schools, hospitals, and offices to avoid unnecessary standards. I would like to draw your attention to the global voluntary Go AQS initiative. It is global experts. They offer global open indoor air quality standards, distilling core principles and a clear framework for universal and transparent benchmarks for healthy indoor air worldwide. The WHO provides recommendations only for health. Governments include economic perspectives, but they all included are in Go AQS, and perhaps it is a good idea to collaborate with such initiative.
All right, thank you.
We are part of it.
All right, very good. We get another question from Lulu. Several questions, but it kind of comes down to ventilation versus filtration, and so. And I know that's kind of red meat for some of the ASHRAE ventilation people that may be in the crowd here. But her question is, if you are not around industrial pollution, if you're not in the area of wildfires, does it make more sense to open up your windows and rely on fresh air more than on filtration? And how do you make that kind of a distinction? And maybe we start with Nick.
Ooh, that's a loaded question, but okay, I'll take a stab at it. Of course, what was mentioned is if you don't have wildfire smoke, if you don't have this, if you don't have that, if those ifs, you never know when they're going to come or when they're not going to come. Sure, if you're on a mountain somewhere in Tibet and it's beautiful outdoor air, yes, you want to bring in that outdoor air, especially if it's in a changeover season where it's tempered, without a doubt. But based on some of the research, and I was trying to find it, but based on some of the research that came out supporting ASHRAE standard 241, where on the control of infectious aerosols within the built environment, you can either ventilate or you could use filters. And Dr. Zatari, Goel, and Mazer conducted some research that showed that filtration is 1/4 the cost of ventilating when you take into consideration the capital cost of the equipment plus the operational cost, which is more important. It's kind of like saying, can you increase ventilation above the minimum when you're in the middle of winter in Minneapolis as compared to increasing ventilation in Miami in the middle of the summer? It becomes an expensive proposition. But when you look at, and depending on where you're at, it's not if you have wildfire smoke or if. Under Title 24 in California, they mandate MERV 13 filtration. You look at 3 consumables in cars. You've got gasoline, brakes, and tires. Gasoline, okay, turns into gaseous contaminants. Brakes and tires, where do they go? Where do they go? They end up suspended in the air and they become PM 2.5, PM 3, PM 1 as well. And they're just floating around the breathing zone of people. So we don't know what we don't know that's in outdoor air. And I believe that filtration is probably the better method to go. I'm not saying no outdoor air, but I think there could be a good compromise between the two of them. And when it comes to filtration, something that outdoor air can't ventilate fast enough or at a high enough rate is the internally generated contaminants, which only the recirculated airflow can handle. Again, reinforcing the need for higher filtration or MERV filtration levels within HVAC systems. So it's not a binary, well, do you want to do ventilation or do you want to do filtration? Of course, it's both. You can't say it's one over the other, but you got to take into consideration, 90.1 energy codes. If you're going to bring in outdoor air, again, in Minneapolis, middle of January as compared to Miami in the middle of July, the operational costs are rather high.
Very much. And Dr. Olsiewski, you've got a follow-up here. And something I'd like to add as a follow-up that Lulu had was with regard to allergies. She asked, is a sealed environment, kind of a sterile environment, a contributor to allergy sensitivity? And would it be better to actually expose yourself more to allergies over time and create immunity? I think there's that's maybe a bigger question, but maybe feed that into what your response is. And you're muted, Doctor.
For that question, research has been done. Back when I worked in philanthropy, I funded some of it actually, and understanding what dust is healthy and what dust is not healthy. Jack Gilbert published on it, a number of European groups. Again, I'm not an immunologist, whatever. So some things are good for you and some things are not. All right. So, but we have the human microbiome is an important part of us and it's everywhere. But this is about filtration. And this is, and again, we can't, I have a high filtration in my home and I have the fan on all the time, but I don't think it's impacting my human microbiome. All right. Be that as it may, let's get back to bringing in outdoor air. All right. So I look outside, it's kind of cloudy here. I am. And I just looked at the Outdoor Air Quality Index. So for where I am, and the index that the U.S. has, now how good is that index? Well, that index does not have a sensor right outside my home, but when I look at the indoor air quality or the outdoor air quality, it's like 119, and it says sensitive groups should not go outside. Okay, am I a sensitive group? Is the newborn, the children, should the people at the daycare, should the kids be inside or outside? No one's looking at that, all right? They're just like, oh, we got to open the windows. All right, so the awareness for outdoor air quality, I mean, people can look on their phones and in the US and get to the Air Now data through like the Weather Channel and so on. It's very easy to access outdoor air quality, but then making that decision. If it's 119, as I said, should the children at the daycare be outside or inside? I'm not making that decision, and I'm certainly not going to, again, I don't feel qualified to tell them what to do. But there's also a very popular story going around right now of something that I've been doing for quite some time, and that is I think they're calling it house burping. And so even though I have good filtration in my home, there are volatile organic compounds, chemicals that may not be removed by the filters. And so opening the air, and again, this is on all sorts of popular media so figuring out, should I burp my house today, or maybe I'll wait till tomorrow? And as much as I prefer to spend money on filters rather than sensors, but the air sensor I have in my home says I have good indoor air quality in my home. So I'm not going to open my windows.
All right. I want to go back to Suzana. You had mentioned circularity, and we've talked about verifiability and environmental integrity governance. I think a lot of these things, and to go to Paula's example of the New York system, where they actually said, no, we don't want to know. As part of this, just like competence in the technology, and do we have an ability to build competent systems? So is there, what's keeping us from having a standard, a technology standard for sensors? And, is there a verifiable chain of custody on that data? Can we use a blockchain technology or tokenization to actually track that with today's technology? Maybe start that. Nick, you want to comment on that?
So yes, on the tech. Where are we here?
Well, Suzana, you brought this up, of the circularity, verifiability. What's keeping us from having confidence in those systems, and how do we maintain control of that data over time?
Circularity and filtration, that's a huge topic. And I mean, we can spend probably another session just on this, but there are numerous things like, let's say I think where I would start is, being that I have a background in building and implementing strategies, would be, let's talk about shifting the business model. Do we really need to sell filters, or can we sell clean air? I mean, all of you working in the filtration industry, I believe you've had this discussion. How can we sell clean air? Like, can we have something that is a contract which is performance-based, where we sell filters which are better, which are able to be recycled, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I would start there. And then the second would be, how can we build in something that is visible, where we talked about the sensors, where we can talk about some self-cleaning systems. We can also go into, that's why I'm saying it's a topic for itself. We can go into, how do we measure? Do we measure our filters? And we had that discussion offline before we started the session. Is your filter really MERV 16? Like, does the manufacturer measure, or do we need a special institute to measure? Do we transition there? So I think it's a super, super complex topic. Then we would go into, how can we change the design? Which materials do we use of filters that are existing? And then we go into procurement, legislation. What benefits can we offer, or should we offer to companies to move them towards that? I mean, again, if it's cheaper for you to recycle a filter or send it back to a company you bought it from than dispose it as landfill, you're definitely probably going to do that as a company.
Yeah, and you just answered a question from the audience from Mac Barnhart. He just asked about, you pay for MERV 13. How do you know that you're getting MERV 13? You're buying a filter. Is it sealed? Does it work right? Is it damaged? I think flipping that script to selling clean air as opposed to selling these little devices is a much more important way of changing the economic thinking on that. Iyad, you had something.
Yeah, Mike, we have 3 minutes left, and I think we need to address all the great points that have been highlighted right now. I'd like to zoom out and give the microphone to Surendar. How can we make this so vivid and communicated to the audience, not just in the Middle East, not just in Asia or Africa, but how can we get all this information? Nick talked about standards. Not everybody is willing to read a standard or two or three and implement it, communicate it. So my question to Surendar is, how can we get this communicated to the audience, irrespective of their, level of education or where they're at? Surendar?
Yeah, and I would say multiple ways, really. And again, speaking as a journalist, obvious way would be to publish articles on it. Also, explore other ways. For instance, again, something very focused like what we are doing with the IEQ and fertility campaign, to expand on it. I quite like what Suzana said a while ago about making, she referred to a business model when it comes to providing clean air. And that's something I felt was really quite profound, because we already have that when it comes to cooling as a service. So we're doing that, and it's just a matter of getting the industry to think along those lines. So, as a communicator, this is a very powerful message that I would like to take to multiple stakeholders. And a lot of what we do as journalists is we do a lot of advocacy. At times we do a lot of activism also. I know activism is not such a good word to use, but we do that, and because we are earnest about making sure that all these great messages go out, and it could be through magazines. We are about to launch a broadcast channel soon enough, so that's one more avenue for us to push IAQ and air filtration messages out. We do an awards program. We have 47 categories in that awards program, and of that, about 1/5 have to do with indoor air quality, with a sharper focus on air filtration and so on and so forth. And when we do that, it gives us a great opportunity to to sort of nudge the industry. When I say industry, I'm talking about multiple stakeholders, master developers, sectoral end users, consultants, contractors, manufacturers, everyone, to look at various aspects, be it, filter efficiency, circular economy, and so on and so forth. So there are really multiple strategies. I don't want to take too much time, but I hope that answers your question.
No, it's fantastic. Thanks very much, Surendar. This is a great perspective, and we've got so many other things to talk about. We are running out of time, but just some of the things that I'd like us to think about as we go out is that the energy versus health. Our value, another invisible thing that is easily done versus indoor air quality. We have expense versus operations. We have built versus operational metrics. A lot of things that we brought up here today that are food for additional thought. So let's finish up with our closing statements from the panelists. We're going to, again, same order as we did before. Paula, let's start with Dr. Paula Olsiewski.
Well, thank you. This has been a really exciting and stimulating panel. Thanks for being part of it. I want to emphasize that in order to make progress in this area, we have to come up with ways of making indoor air quality visible to people who have no idea of how important this is. Whether it's the economic argument, the health argument, but we need to make sure that people who can make decisions about going forward are armed with good information from the scientific and engineering and industry community, so that we can make and implement policy so that we will have air as just as we regulate water and food. So thank you.
All right, great. Nick Agopian, you're up.
Thank you so much. I'll try to make this quick. We stand at a turning point, and the science exists, the filtration technology exists, the sensing technology exists. What remains is alignment between regulation, economics, accountability, and of course, dissemination of information that Surendar talked about. I'm so glad that from the poll, particles won because some of the latest research that came from the University of Nottingham showed that 83% of the total harm we have within indoor air is from particles. So that's great. And indoor air should be treated, as we discussed, as a critical infrastructure, not an optional enhancement, or above minimum code. Minimum code must increase. This means we need, we have to have defined health targets. We need continuous verification, transparent reporting, which is important. And if we can offer incentives to reward sustained performance, I think more and more people will jump on the bandwagon, because we talked about the power of the dollar or of currency. Once that is measurable, it becomes critical. And when air quality becomes measurable and enforceable, innovation accelerates, and then so does adoption. So the question is, we no longer need to determine how we improve indoor air, but the question is whether we choose to make it a governed standard of care. So I'll yield the mic at that point, and I'll pass it on to somebody else.
All right. Thanks very much, Nick Agopian, for joining us today. And Suzana Vidaković, you're up.
Thank you. Well, I want to paraphrase something that Nikola Tesla said. What looks like success is usually years of relentless and unseen work. And I would say let's take that step here today. If you, as a private person, talk to people around you, tell them, inform them why air quality is a topic and what they should be looking into. And if you're working in the filtration industry, talk to your R&D teams, product management teams. Let's see if we can make filters and filtration products more durable. Let's move the whole industry and everything towards circular economy, because that's going to have an impact on the topic itself, on air quality and how we handle it. Wonderful discussion, great topic. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Suzana. Heike Krüger, can you finish up for us?
Thank you. Our call as ambassador for nanoparticles is clear. We want safe, healthy indoor air. By limiting invisible ultrafine particles below 1,000 particles per cubic centimeter, following the WHO best practices to protect people's health indoors, where we spend 90% of our life, and in additional, clear rules for the use of toner-based devices in buildings and other sources of air polluters. Prevention with recommendations for printers, particle number counting, use room air purifiers to reduce the ultrafine particles with the best filters in buildings, use laser printers never without retrofit filters, install laser printers in separate rooms, replace laser printer with inkjets. If it's possible, you print healthier, reduce energy consumption, and avoid pollution. We have 1 billion laser printers in the world. Print less, you protect the environment, your health, and your wallet. So yes, I have a dream that one day everyone can breathe equally clean indoor air globally, without invisible threats in schools, offices, medical facilities, public spaces, and private rooms. That dream begins here with all of us. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Heike. And a great reminder that a lot of times the pollution inside your building is coming from inside your building. So Surendar, Balakrishnan, your closing statement, please.
Sure, thanks, thanks, Mike. I'd like to say that, first of all, it's been a great discussion, and my thanks to WFI and to my co-panelists for wonderful insights. And I think one of the major challenges that we face as IAQ stakeholders are budgetary constraints when it comes to developers and master developers. I keep talking about them. I hope I don't get into trouble with them. But they want to. They have a mandate to maximize their profits. At times, I feel at the cost of providing good health in the built environment. And that's something that we need to address. Here in the UAE, we see the introduction of the escrow account, which sort of keeps developers in check, to make sure that they spend all the money that buyers pay them to to buy a house, and that money is used for building that particular structure. So I would suggest, if it's possible, to come up with a sort of a mini escrow account that sort of forces developers to allocate certain funds for promoting good air quality in buildings. And that would be a step forward, I think. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much again for this opportunity.
Thank you very much for being here. And Dr. Iyad Al-Attar, today's session chair, you want to wrap this up for us?
Thank you so much, Mike. I want to extend my sincere appreciation, first of all, to the World Filtration Institute for facilitating this. This is a dream that came up 3.5 years ago, with casual discussion with Dr. Christian's son, who's with us here today. And we came up with Filtration Hour. Filtration Hour is actually 60 minutes. But you see today why? Because 90 minutes flew by so fast, and we barely scratched the surface. I want to extend my sincere appreciation to the 5 panelists. I know how busy you are for availing your time and efforts and insights. Also, I want to thank the great and fantastic moderators. Did a great job, I think, navigating through your brilliant minds. I want to tell you that the momentum will continue on April 9th, addressing air quality governance. As I said before, we know exactly what the problem is. We are almost very good, very fluent in addressing the problem. We got to be equally fluent in addressing solutions. We can't dance around change. We got to get into it. So I invite all of you to join us again on April 9th to address the Air Quality Governance 3 and continue to make a difference. Thank you so much for being here today. I want to thank also the WFI audience and our amazing administrator, Camila, who's always not visible, but visible with her efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Filtration Hour.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Iyad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.